What's up, everyone, and welcome to this week's Cybersecurity Weekly, where we review the security events that happened in the last week. As always, I have broken the stories down in the timeline, and there is a list of the stories with time markers in the description below, so you can click on any of those time markers to jump around to any story you want. If you find my work valuable, of course, I ask you to hit the like button and share this episode with anyone you know who can benefit from this information. And if you have not already, please consider subscribing to my channel.
Oh, drat these computers. They're so naughty and so complex. I could pinch them.
We start off today with phishing. In response to Microsoft's decision steps to block Excel 4.0 and Visual Basic for application macros by default in Microsoft Office applications, threat actors are adopting new attack techniques. Researchers from Proofpoint reported that threat actors are increasingly using container files such as ISO and RAR and Windows shortcut or link files in their malware campaigns. Proofpoint researchers noticed that the use of ISO, RAR, and link file attachments reached nearly 175% during the same period, and at least 10 malicious actors started using link files in their campaigns since February 2022. According to analysis of campaigned threats, which include threats manually analyzed and contextualized by Proofpoint, threat actors, the use of macro-enabled attachments by threat actors decreased approximately 66% between October 2021 and June 2022, reads the analysis published by Proofpoint. Before October 2021, most of malicious phishing campaigns were spreading malware using weaponized Office documents. Upon tricking the victims into opening the file, the attack chain will start. Microsoft's move to block macros has pushed threat actors in finding alternative techniques to bypass Mark of the Web or MOTW protections. The Mark of the Web is a feature that was introduced by Microsoft to determine the origin of a file. If a file was downloaded from the internet or from another location on the network, it would contain a comment in the file identifying the zone from which the file was downloaded from. Depending on this zone, like intranet or internet, Windows would handle the file accordingly so as to avoid users or keep users from running or opening potentially harmful files from untrusted sources. The researchers observed that the number of campaigns containing link files has again increased 1,675% since October 2021. Proofpoint tracked multiple threat actors, both criminal or cyber criminal gangs and app groups, leveraging these link files. We now move on to patches. LibreOffice is an open source office productivity suite, a project of the Document Foundation, or TDF. LibreOffice maintainers addressed 3 security flaws in their suite, including an arbitrary code execution issue tracked to CVE 2022-26305. The CVE 2022-26305 flaw is classified as the execution of untrusted macros due to improper certification validation. The issue could lead to the execution of malicious macros. By default, LibreOffice executes macros only if they are stored in a trusted file location or if they are signed by a trusted certificate included in a list of certificates stored in the user's configuration database. This flaw cannot be exploited if the macro security level is set to very high or if the user has no trusted certificates. The second issue fixed in the popular software is a static initialization vector that allows to recover passwords for web connections without knowing the master password. LibreOffice supports the storage of passwords for web connections in the user's configuration database. The stored passwords are encrypted with a single master key provided by the user, reads the advisory. A flaw in LibreOffice existed where the required initialization vector for encryption was always the same, which weakens the security of the encryption, making them vulnerable if an attacker has access to the user's configuration data. The third issue addressed in the software tracked to CVE 2022-26307 is related to the use of weak master keys that could be guessed by attackers through a brute force attack. LibreOffice supports the storage of passwords for web connections in the user's configuration database. The stored passwords are encrypted with a single master key provided by the user, reads the advisory. A flaw in LibreOffice existed where master key was poorly encoded, resulting in weakening its entropy from 128 to 43 bits, making the stored passwords vulnerable to a brute force attack if an attacker has access to users' stored configuration. We now move on to attacks, vulnerabilities, and updates. Recently, Atlassian released security updates to address a critical hard-coded credentials vulnerability in CVE or in Confluence server and data center tracked to CVE 2022-26138. A remote unauthenticated attacker can exploit the vulnerability to log into unpatched servers once installed the questions for Confluence app, or this plugin, Questions for Confluence app, once it's installed, versions 2.7.34, 2.7.35, and 3.0.2, a Confluence user account with the username disabled system user is created. According to Atlassian, the account allows administrators to migrate data from the app to Confluence Cloud. The bad news is that the account is created with a hard-coded password and is added to the Confluence users group, which allows viewing and editing all non-restricted pages within Confluence by default. The company pointed out that uninstalling the Questions for Confluence app does not solve this vulnerability because the disabled system user account is not removed after the app has been uninstalled. Admins of impacted Confluence server or data center instances can remediate this vulnerability with following actions. Option 1, update to a non-vulnerable version of Questions for Confluence. Or option number 2, disable or delete the disabled system user account. The attacks exploiting the issue began after the release of hard-coded credentials on Twitter. Rapid7 researchers pointed out that the exploitation of the CVE 2022-26138 flaw is underway, meaning it's active. People are attacking it and trying to exploit it right now. This easily allows a remote, unauthenticated attacker to browse an organization's Confluence instance, meaning getting all your secrets about your application, all the documentation that you keep in Confluence that's not private, it's public, is visible. Unsurprisingly, it didn't take long for Rapid7 to observe exploitation once the hard-coded credentials were released, given the high value of Confluence for attackers who often jump on Confluence vulnerabilities to execute ransomware attacks, reads a post published by Rapid7 researchers. A malicious campaign targeting Discord users leverages multiple NPM packages to deliver malware that steals their payment card information, Kaspersky researchers warn. The malicious code hidden in the packages and tracked as Lofi Stealer is a modified version of an open-source token logger called Volt Stealer. The Python malware is a modified version of an open-source token logger called Volt Stealer. It is intended to steal Discord tokens from infected machines along with the victim's IP address and upload them to or via HTTP, reads the analysis published by Kaspersky. The malicious code can detect when a user logs in, change email or password, enable disable multi-factor authentication, and add new payment methods, including complete bank card details. The harvested data are uploaded to the remote endpoint whose address is hard-coded. Once this data is harvested, it is uploaded to one of several Replit hosted instances whose addresses are hard-coded within the malware. Kaspersky states that they are constantly monitoring the updates to repositories to rapidly detect all new malicious packages. On July 21st, 2022, Akamai mitigated the largest DDoS attack that ever hit one of its European customers. The attack hit an Akamai customer in Eastern Europe that was targeted 75 times in the past 30 days with multiple types of DDoS attacks, including UDP fragmentation, ICMP flood, reset flood, SYN flood, TCP anomaly, TCP fragment, PSH ACK flood, FIN push flood, and push flood. On Thursday, July 21st, 2022, Akamai detected and mitigated the largest DDoS attack ever launched against a European customer on the Prolexic platform, with globally distributed attack traffic peaking at 853.7 gigabits a second and 659.6 messages per second over 14 hours, reads the post published by Akamai. The attack, which targeted a swath of customer IP addresses, formed the largest global horizontal attack ever mitigated on the Prolexic platform. The malicious traffic, again, peaked at 853.7 gigabits per second and 659.6 messages per second over 14 hours. This is the largest global horizontal attack ever mitigated on the Akamai Prolexic platform. According to Akamai, threat actors used a highly sophisticated global botnet of compromised devices to launch the attack. Microsoft warns of threat actors that are increasingly abusing Internet Information Services extensions to establish covert backdoors into servers and maintain persistence in the target networks. IIS backdoors are also hard to detect because they follow the same code structure as legitimate and harmless modules. The attackers usually exploit a critical vulnerability in the hosted application to gain initial access and drop a script web shell as the first stage of the attack chain. When the web shell is used to install a rogue, then the web shell is used to install a rogue IIS module that establishes persistent access to the server, which is hard to discover. The shell also monitors incoming and outgoing requests and runs commands sent by remote attackers. It also allows attackers to dump credentials in the background as the user authenticates to the web application. In early July, researchers from Kaspersky Lab discovered a new session manager backdoor that was employed in attacks targeting Microsoft IIS servers since March 2021. Session Manager is written in C++. It's a malicious native code IIS module that is loaded by some IIS applications to process legitimate HTTP requests that are continuously sent to the server. Microsoft researchers also detailed a campaign that took place between January and May 2022. Threat actors targeted Exchange servers, exploiting the proxy shell flaws to ultimately deploy a backdoor called Finance Service Model.dll. After a period of doing reconnaissance, dumping credentials, and establishing a remote access method, the attackers installed a custom IIS backdoor called Finance Service Model.dll in the folder C inetpub www bin. The backdoor had built-in capability to perform Exchange management operations such as enumerating installed mailbox accounts and exporting mailboxes for exfiltration as detailed within the original article. Now, to mitigate IIS backdoor attacks, experts recommend to install the latest security updates, especially for server components, enable antivirus and other security protections, review sensitive roles and groups, restrict access to applying the principle of least privilege, prioritize alerts, and inspect config files and bin folders. Researchers from WithSecure, formerly F-Secure Business, have discovered an ongoing operation named DUCKTAIL that targets individuals and organizations that operate on Facebook's business and ads platform. Experts attribute the campaign to a Vietnamese financially motivated threat actor, which is suspected to be active since 2018. Our investigation reveals that the threat actor has been actively developing and distributing malware linked to the DUCKTAIL operation since the latter half of 2021. Evidence suggests that the threat actor may have been active in the cybercriminal space as early as late 2018, reads the report published by the experts. The threat actors target individuals and employees that may have access to a Facebook business account. They use an information stealer malware that steals browser cookies and abuse authentication Facebook sessions to steal information from the victim's Facebook account. The end goal is to hijack Facebook business accounts managed by the victims. The threat actors target individuals with managerial, digital marketing, digital media, and human resources roles in companies. The attackers connect the victims through LinkedIn. Some of the samples observed by the experts have been hosted on file or cloud hosting services such as Dropbox, iCloud, and Mediafire. WithSecure, researchers noticed that samples employed in DUCKTAIL operation were written in .NET Core and were compiled using a single file feature. This feature bundles all dependent libraries and files into a single executable. It also includes the main assembly. Experts pointed out that the usage of .NET Core and its single file feature is uncommon in malware development. The use of .NET Core allows the attackers to embed Telegram.bot client as well as any other external dependencies into a single executable and use Telegram channels as its command and control center. We've been hearing about Telegram being used as command and control centers in a number of stories just in the last 3 months. It is starting to increase that much more because these attackers have figured out how to use the existing infrastructure of Telegram as their command and control system. In order to steal Facebook session cookies from the victims, the malware scans the machine for popular browsers, including Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, Brave browser, and Firefox. For each of the browsers that it finds, it extracts all the stored cookies, including any Facebook session cookie. The malware also steals information from the victim's personal Facebook account, including name, email address, date of birth, and user ID, along with other data such as two-factor authentication codes, user agents, IP addresses, and geolocation. WithSecure cannot determine the success, or lack thereof, that the threat actor has had in circumventing Facebook's existing security features and hijacking businesses, concludes the report. However, the threat actor has continued to update and push out the malware in an attempt to improve its ability to bypass existing and new Facebook security features alongside other implemented features. Security expert Proxy Life and Cyber researchers recently uncovered a Qakbot campaign that was leveraging the Windows 7 calculator app for DLL-SideLoading attacks. Dynamic Link Library, or DLL-SideLoading, is an attack method that takes advantage of how Microsoft Windows applications handle DLL files. In such attacks, malware places a spoofed malicious DLL file in a Windows WinSXS directory so that the operating system loads it instead of the legitimate file. According to the researcher, the operators are using this technique, or have been using this technique since at least July 11th. Qakbot, also known as Qbot, also known as Qakbot, and PinkSlipBot, is an info-stealing malware that has been active since 2008. The malware spreads via mall spam campaigns. It inserts replies in active email threads. In this campaign, the spam message contains an HTML file that has base64 encoded images and a password-protected zip file. The password-protected zip file contains an ISO, and the password for opening it is reported in or is listed in the HTML file. Now, the use of the password-protected zip file is a common technique adopted by threat actors to evade detection, since a password-protected file cannot easily be scanned by an antivirus. The ISO file contains 4 different files. There's a link file, a legitimate calc.exe application, Windows codex.dll that's in the same folder, since again, as we said, as we just read, the Windows will use a local version before it'll use the global version in many instances. Then there's a 75333.dll. The .link file appears as a PDF containing information of interest for the victims. The shortcut points to the calculator app in Windows. Upon executing the Windows 7 calculator app, it'll automatically attempt to load the legitimate Windows codex DLL, but it's going to load the one from the folder that it's contained in. Now, the code will load any DLL with the same name if placed in the same folder, which is just what I just said, as the calc.exe executable, resulting in the execution of a malicious DLL. So, if you keep a DLL in the same folder as the exe, it'll load that one if it has the same name as the legitimate one in the Windows system the operating system. It'll load the local one as opposed to the global one. In this case, the application is calc.exe, and the malicious file named Windows codex.dll masquerades as a support file for calc.exe. Reads the analysis published by Cybel. Upon executing the calc.exe, it further loads Windows codec DLL and executes the final Qakbot payload using redserver32.exe. The final payload injects its malicious code into explorer.exe and performs all the malicious activities. Threat actors are targeting websites using open source e-commerce platform PrestaShop by exploiting a zero-day flaw tracked to CVE 2022-36408 that can allow to execute arbitrary code and potentially steal customers' payment information. PrestaShop is currently used by 300,000 shops worldwide and is available in 60 different languages. The vulnerability affects PrestaShop versions 1.6.0.10 or later, and versions 1.7.82 or later running modules vulnerable to SQL injection, for example, the Wishlist 2.0 all the way up to 2.1.0 module. The maintainer team has been made aware that malicious actors are exploiting a combination of known and unknown security vulnerabilities to inject malicious code in PrestaShop websites, allowing them to execute arbitrary instructions and potentially steal customers' payment information, reads the advisory published by the maintainers at PrestaShop. While investigating this attack, we found a previously unknown vulnerability chain that we are fixing. The attack chain reconstructed by the experts investigating the attacks is as follows. So the attacker submits a post request to the endpoint vulnerable to the SQL injection, and there's some command within that injection. After approximately 1 second, the attacker submits a GET request to the homepage with no parameters. Now, this seems to trigger whatever they posted in their SQL injection, resulting in a PHP file called blm.php being created at the root of the shop's directory. The attacker now submits a GET request to the new file, this blm.php, that was created. blm.php allows them to execute arbitrary instructions. Now, be aware that not finding this pattern on your logs or in your logs doesn't necessarily mean that your shop has not been affected by the attack. The complexity of the exploit means that there are several ways of performing it, and attackers might also try to hide their tracks, like deleting information from the logs. Clarity researchers discovered 2 vulnerabilities in FileWave MDM product that exposed more than 1,000 organizations to cyber attacks. FileWave MDM is used by organizations to view and manage device configurations, locations, security settings, and other device data. An organization may use the MDM platform to push mandatory software and updates to devices, change device settings, lock, and when necessary, remotely wipe devices. The now patched vulnerabilities are an unauthenticated bypass issue tracked to CVE 2022-34907 and a hard-coded cryptographic key tracked to CVE 2022-34906. Both issues reside in FileWave MDM before version 14.6.3 and 14.7.x. Prior to 14.7.2, FileWave addressed the vulnerabilities in version 14.7.2 earlier this month. A remote attacker can trigger the vulnerabilities to bypass authentication and gain full control over the MDM platform and its managed devices. The authentication bypass vulnerability can allow a remote attacker to achieve super user access and take full control of the MDM install, then use it to manage any device on the target organization. During our research, we were able to identify a critical flaw in the authentication process of the FileWave MDM product suite, allowing us to create an exploit that bypasses authentication requirements in the platform and achieve super user access, the platform's most privileged user, reads the analysis published by Clarity. By exploiting this authentication bypass vulnerability, we were able to take full control over any internet-connected MDM instance. The researchers discovered more than 1,100 organizations in multiple industries using the flawed MDM version. Now, in order to demonstrate the CVE 2022-34907 flaw, the experts created a standard FileWave setup and enrolled 6 devices of their own. They used the vulnerability to leak data about all of the devices managed by the instance of the MDM server. The ransomware gang Lockbit claims to have hacked the Italian revenue agency Agenzia delle Entrate and added the government agency to the list of victims reported on its dark web leak site. The group claims to have stolen 78 gigabytes of data, including company documents, scans, financial reports, and contracts. It plans to release screenshots of files and samples very soon. If the attack will be confirmed or is confirmed, it can represent one of the most severe incidents suffered by Italian government agencies. The Agenzia delle Entrate, or the Italian Revenue Agency, enforces the financial code of Italy and collects taxes and revenue. The agency provides several online services for Italian and non-Italian taxpayers. This time, it's not unknown it isn't known if the ransomware gang has already contacted the Italian government or the amount of the ransom it is demanding. The Lockbit ransomware gang gives 5 days to the agency to pay the ransom to avoid the leak of stolen data. The gang has been active since at least 2019, and today it's one of the most active ransomware gangs. At the end of June, the Lockbit ransomware operation released Lockbit 3.0, which has important novelties such as bug bounty programs, Zcash payment, and new extortion tactics. The new version 3.0 of the ransomware was already used in recent attacks. The introduction of the bug bounty program made the headlines. It is the first ransomware gang asking cybersecurity experts to submit bugs in their malware to improve it. The Lockbit 3.0 operation is also using a new extortion model that allows threat actors to buy data stolen from the victims during the attacks. This means that someone could buy data of Italian taxpayers and use them for a broad range of financial scams. The U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency published an advisory for the above vulnerabilities. The most severe one, rated as critical, is an arbitrary PHP code execution track to CVE 2022-252-777. Now that is in Drupal, so they need to fix the code. Drupal core sanitizes file names with dangerous extensions upon upload, references SA core 2020-0112, and strips leading and trailing dots from file names to prevent uploading server configuration files, reference SA core 2019-010, reads the advisory. However, the protections for these two vulnerabilities previously did not work correctly together. As a result, if the site were configured to allow the upload of files with an htaccess extension, these file names would not be properly sanitized. This could allow bypassing the protections provided by Drupal core's default .htaccess files and possible remote code execution on Apache web servers. In order to mitigate the issue, it is mandatory for the field administrator to explicitly configure a file field to allow htaccess as an extension, a restricted permission, or a contributed model of custom code that overrides allowed file uploads. We now move on to other security news. On July 26, 2022, Microsoft researchers discovered that the fake updates malware was being distributed via Raspberry Robin malware. Raspberry Robin is a Windows worm discovered by cybersecurity researchers from Red Canary. The malware propagates through removable USB devices. Now, the malicious code uses Windows Installer to reach out to QNAP-associated domains and download a malicious DLL. The malware uses Tor exit nodes as a backup command and control infrastructure. The malware was first spotted in September 2021. The experts observed Raspberry Robin targeting organizations in the technology and manufacturing industries. Initial access is typically through infected removable drives, often USB devices. The malware uses command.exe to read and execute a file stored on the infected external drive. It leverages execute.exe for external network communication to a rogue domain used as command and control to download and install a DLL library file. Then execute.exe launches a legitimate Windows utility, fodhelper.exe, which in turn runs rundll32.exe to execute a malicious command. Experts pointed out that processes launched by fodhelper.exe run with elevated administrative privileges without requiring a user account control prompt. Now, Microsoft experts observed the threat actor dev0206 using the Raspberry Robin worm to deploy a downloader on networks that were also compromised by threat actors using Evil Corp TTPs. On July 26, 2022, Microsoft researchers discovered the fake updates malware being delivered via existing Raspberry Robin infections, reads the update published by Microsoft. The Dev0206 associated fake updates activity on affected systems has since led to follow-on actions resembling Dev0243 pre-ransomware behavior. Dev0206 is an access broker tracked by Microsoft, which uses malvertising campaigns to compromise networks worldwide. Targets are tricked into executing a fake browser update or software package, or to download a zip file and double-click it. The zip package contains a JavaScript file which, once executed, will start the infection process. Once successfully executed, the JavaScript framework successfully executed, also referred to as sock goalish, it acts as a loader for other malware campaigns that use access purchased from Dev0206, most commonly Cobalt Strike payloads, reads the analysis published by Microsoft. In many cases, the infection process led to the deployment of custom Cobalt Strike loaders attributed to Dev0243, which falls under activities tracked by the experts as Evil Corp. Around November 2021, Dev0243 started to deploy the Lockbit 2.0 ransomware as a service payload. Experts believe that Dev0243 threat actors used a ransomware service payload by Evil Corp activity group to avoid attribution. The discovery made by Microsoft is very interesting because it's the first time that the researchers found evidence that Raspberry Robin operators leverage an access broker to compromise enterprise networks. Robust identity and access management is a strategic choice. Usernames and passwords are insufficient and vulnerable means of authentication on their own. Therefore, it is essential to employ strong authentication techniques like multi-factor authentication to confirm users' identities before granting secure access to resources. Sarah Lefevre's product marketing manager, Thales, states in her recent article, "It's true, passwords no longer meet the demands of today's identity and access requirements. Therefore, strong authentication methods are needed to improve security without hindering user convenience." TechTarget states that strong authentication is any method of verification, verifying the identity of a user or device that is intrinsically stringent enough to ensure the security of the system it protects by withstanding any attacks it is likely to encounter. It is commonly referred to as a way to confirm a user's identity when passwords are not enough. As TechTarget continues, the European Bank and many that adopt its guidelines state that strong authentication must include at least two mutually independent factors so that the compromise of one will not lead to the compromise of the other. These factors are knowledge, something the user knows; possession, something the user has; inherence, something the user is. As Lefevre states, employing more than one of these measures is needed to ensure only legitimate users can access applications and services, and when applications contain sensitive data, such as confidential personally identifiable information, that needs to be protected. In IAM strategy, strong authentication methods like multi-factor authentication and modern authentication are quickly replacing traditional methods like passwords, especially as the new gold standard for how IT and security teams enforce access controls and gain visibility into access events, especially as workloads move to the cloud, VMs, and across remote and hybrid environments. Strong authentication is a critical component of modern-day identity and access management. It not only provides additional layers of security around entry points, but allows for customizable levels of authentication, authorization, and access control throughout your environment, giving users only the permissions and sign-in requirements they need. To illustrate that point, they investigated two of the primary methods, multi-factor authentication and modern authentication, further in depth. When choosing a strong authentication service, be it on-premises or in the cloud, features to consider are policy-based access with ability to implement conditional access. Now, in order to optimize the end-user experience while maintaining the best access security for a particular user and application, look for a solution that can enforce a range of authentication methods through policies and risk scoring. 2. Resistant to phishing. Phishing accounts for roughly a quarter of all data breaches, according to Verizon's 2021 DBIR. Strong authentication solutions with FIDO2 can both authenticate securely and prevent attacks. There's user experience. Do the methods involved create security fatigue, or is it simple to secure multiple user authentication journeys? And then adaptability and customizability. Can you assign different access controls based on role or asset? What about context environment or use case? ENISA published a report that provides anonymized and aggregated information about major telecom security incidents in 2021. Every European telecom operator that suffers a security incident notifies its national authorities, which share a summary of these reports to ENISA at the start of every calendar year. The reporting of security incidents has been part of the EU's regulatory framework for telecoms since 2009 reform of the telecoms package. This year, the report includes data related to reports of 168 incidents submitted by national authorities from 26 EU member states and 2 EFTA countries. The incident had a significant impact on the victim. The total user hours lost resulted by multiplying for each incident the number of users by the number of hours was 5,106 million user hours, which is 5 billion user hours. Experts noticed a huge increase compared to 841 million user hours lost in 2020. The reason for this impact of a notable EU-wide incident that was reported separately by 3 MSs, ENISA has published technical guidelines on incident reporting under the EECC1, including on thresholds and calculated hours lost. Below are the takeaways from incidents that took place in 2021. 4.16% of report incidents in 2021 refer to OTT communication services. For this reason, the European agency required further attention for security incidents related to OTT services. This is the first time that incidents concerning confidentiality and authenticity were reported. The number of incidents labeled as malicious actions passed from 4% in 2020 to 8% in 2021. System failures continue to dominate in terms of impact, but the downward trend continues. System failures accounted for 363 million user hours lost compared to 419 million user hours lost in 2020. The number of incidents caused by human errors is the same as in 2020. Only 22% of incidents were reported as being related to third-party failures compared to 29%. The Microsoft Threat Intelligence Center and the Microsoft Security Response Center researchers linked a threat group known as Knotweed to an Austrian surveillance firm named DSIRF, known for using multiple Windows and Adobe zero-day exploits. The group targets entities in Europe and Central America with a surveillance tool dubbed Subzero. The DSIRF website states they provide services to multinational corporations in the technology, retail, energy, and financial sectors, and that they have a set of highly sophisticated techniques in gathering and analyzing information. They publicly offer several services, including an enhanced due diligence and risk analysis process through providing a deep understanding of individuals and entities, and highly sophisticated red teams to challenge your company's most critical assets. Microsoft states that multiple news reports have linked the company to the Subzero malware toolset used to hack a broad range of devices, phones, computers, and network and internet-connected devices. Researchers found evidence that links DSIRF to the Knotweed's operation, including the command and control infrastructure used by Subzero, the code signing certificate issued to DSIRF that is used to sign an exploit. Microsoft reported Subzero attacks against Microsoft customers in Austria, the United Kingdom, and Panama. The targeted entities are law firms, banks, and strategic consultancies. MSTIC states that the Knotweed's Subzero malware was deployed in multiple ways. The IT giant referred to the different stages of Subzero malware as jump lump for the persistent loader and core lump for the main malware. Once the system is compromised, threat actors drop the core lump downloader and inject it directly in memory to evade detection. It supports multiple features, including key logging, capturing screenshots, exporting files, running a remote shell, and running arbitrary plugins downloaded from Knotweed's command and control server. Researchers from threat intelligence firm RiskIQ, using passive DNS data related to Knotweed attacks, linked the command and control infrastructure used by the malware since February 2020 to DSIRF. One of the zero-day exploits used in Knotweed attacks was triggering the recently patched CVE 2022-22047 issue. The attackers used this exploit to escalate privileges, escape sandboxes, and gain system-level code execution on the vulnerable system. Microsoft will continue to monitor Knotweed activity and implement protections for our customers. The current detections and IOCs detailed in the article are in place and protecting Microsoft customers across our security products. Additional advanced hunting queries are also provided below within the article to help organizations extend their protections and investigations of these attacks. The Spanish police arrested 2 men suspected to be the hackers behind cyber attacks that hit the country's radioactivity alert network between March and June 2021. The RAR, or Radioactivity Alert Network, system is a mesh of gamma radiation detection sensors deployed across the country in order to detect anomalous radiation levels and take protective measures to prevent damage to the environment and the population. The sensors are connected by telephone to the control center at the DGPCE headquarters that gathers the measures and transmit the necessary orders to the sensors. The suspects are former workers of a company in charge of the maintenance of the RAR system. For this reason, they had technical knowledge of the system. The duo was identified after a year-long investigation. The police carried out searches at 2 homes and 1 company in Madrid and San Agustin de Guadalix. The agents found numerous computers and communications devices that were used in the attack. The 2 suspects had access to network of the General Directorate of Civil Protection and Emergencies, the DGPGE, and were able to disconnect the sensors from the system, reducing their detection capacity even in the environment of nuclear power plants. The cyber attack group of the National Police, with the help of the DGPGE, determined that once the attackers gained access to the network, they attempted to delete the RAR management web application in the control center. The suspects targeted more than 300 sensors out of 800 existing ones. In parallel, the duo launched individual attacks against sensors, taking down 300 out of the 800 spread across Spain, essentially breaking their link to the control center and disrupting the data exchange. During the investigation, it was determined that the 2 detainees had been responsible for the maintenance program of the RAR system through a company contracted by GGPCE, for which they had a deep knowledge of it, and that made it easier for them to carry out the attacks and help them in their efforts to mask their authorship, significantly increasing the difficulty of the investigation, reads the announcement published by Polizia Nacional. Cybersecurity researchers have found similarities between the latest version of Lockbit ransomware, Lockbit 3.0, and Blackmatter ransomware. Lockbit 3.0 ransomware was released in June with important novelties such as bug bounty programs, Zcash payment, and new extortion tactics. The gang has been active since at least 2019, and today it's one of the most active ransomware gangs. The ransomware appends the extension HLJKNSK OQ, or 19MQZQZ0S, to file names of the encrypted files and changes their icons to the one for the .ico file. The ransom note references Elon Musk and the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation. After the infection process is completed, the ransomware changes the wallpaper of the machine to inform them of the attack. While debugging the Lockbit 3.0 sample, Trend Micro researchers noticed that multiple portions of Lockbit 3.0's code is borrowed from the Blackmatter ransomware. The experts highlight the similarities to the privilege escalation and harvesting routines used by Blackmatter to identify APIs or conduct different activities. In addition, the latest variant of Lockbit also checks the victim machine's UI language to avoid infecting machines with these languages used in the Commonwealth of Independent States. The deletion of shadow copies, implemented by Lockbit 3.0 and Blackmatter, uses Windows management instrumentation through COM objects. Experts point out that Lockbit 2.0 uses vssadmin.exe for deletion. Well, I mean, some of these things seem just like evolution, just because they both have it doesn't mean that one copied it from the other. These are just evolutions in terms of better execution and better programming. With the release of this latest variant and the launch of Lockbit's bug bounty program, which rewards its affiliates, we expect the Lockbit ransomware group to be even more active in the coming days, concludes the report. We advise organizations and end users to be wary of this new variant, especially since the bug bounty program might help the operators in making their ransomware even more formidable. In April 2020, the U.S. Department of State, the Treasury, and Homeland Security, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation released a joint advisory that warned organizations worldwide about significant cyber threat posed by North Korean nation-state actors to the global banking and financial institutions. Now, I think that should be 2022, not 2020, but whatever. At the time, the U.S. government also offered, I guess it is 2020, government also offered a monetary reward of up to $5 million to anyone who can provide information about the activities carried out by North Korean-linked APT groups. The authorities will also pay for information about past hacking campaigns. Rewards for Justice is offering a reward of up to $10 million for information leading to the identification or location of any person who, while acting at the direction or under control of a foreign government, participates in malicious cyber activities against U.S. critical infrastructure in violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, CFAA, reads the announcement published by Rewards for Justice. Rewards for Justice has set up a dark website to allow anyone with information on foreign malicious cyber activity against the U.S. to provide them via a secure channel. Researchers from Kaspersky have spotted a UEFI firmware rootkit named CosmicStrand, which has been attributed to an unknown Chinese-speaking threat actor. This malware was first spotted by Chinese firm Qihoo360 in 2017. The researchers were not able to determine the initial attack vector, but the analysis of the malicious code allowed the experts to discover which devices can be infected by CosmicStrand. The rootkit is located in the firmware images of Gigabit and Asus motherboards, which are related to designs using the H81 chipset. The researchers speculate the existence of a common vulnerability that was exploited by the attackers to inject the rootkit into the firmware's image. Researchers believe that the attackers could have used a precursor malware implant to inject the rootkit, or may have had physical access to the target device. The infection process aims at tampering with the OS loader to set up another hooked in a function of the Windows kernel. Once this function is called during the normal bootstrap procedure of the OS, the malware takes control of the execution flow one last time. CosmicStrand retrieves the final payload by sending a specifically crafted UDP, preferably, or TCP packet to the command and control server, which in turn replies one or several packets containing chunks of 528 bytes with a specific structure. Then the chunks are reassembled into a series of bytes that are mapped into kernel space and interpreted as a shellcode. The victims identified by the researchers are private individuals located in China, Vietnam, Iran, and Russia, with no link with any organization or industry vertical. The experts attribute the rootkit to a Chinese-speaking threat actor due to code overlaps between CosmicStrand and other malware strains, such as the MyKings botnet and the Moonbounce UEFI implant. Researchers from SecuroNIC's threat research team have uncovered a new attack campaign tracked as STIFF BIZON, targeting high-value organizations in multiple countries, including Czech Republic and Poland. The researchers attribute this campaign to the North Korea-linked APT37 group, aka Ricochet Kolima. The attackers employed the Conry Rat remote access Trojan, which was first spotted by Cisco Talos researchers in 2017 and has been undetected since 2014 while being employed in highly targeted attacks. The Rat was able to avoid detection due to continuous evolution. It is able to has the ability to execute arbitrary code on the target systems and steal data. The Conry Rat has been attributed to North Korea-linked threat actors tracked as Thallium and APT37. The attack chain starts with phishing messages that attempt to trick victims into opening a malicious attachment. The code execution begins by embedding small snippets of code into the shortcut file, which will run and execute along with the intended binary when the user double-clicks on it, reads the analysis published by the experts. This code runs and executes base64 code encoded text appended to the end of the missile.docx file. The base64 payload is executed along with a PowerShell script that contacts the command and control to download and execute both weapons.doc and wp.vbs files. The weapons.doc is a decoy document, while the wp.vbs silently runs in the background and creates a scheduled task on the host called Office Update that executes a PowerShell script encoded in base64. At this point, command and control communications are once again established, allowing the attackers to access the system. A threat actor has linked data of 5.4 million Twitter accounts that were obtained by exploiting a now-fixed vulnerability in the popular social media platform. The threat actor is now offering for sale the stolen data on a popular hacking forum, Breached Forums. In January, a report published on Hacker claimed the discovery of a vulnerability that can be exploited by an attacker to find a Twitter account by the associated phone number and email, even if the user has opted to prevent this in the privacy options. Twitter confirmed the existence of this vulnerability and awarded Zhirinovsky with a $5,040 bounty. Really? Whatever. Anyway, the website Restore Privacy first discovered the advertisement for the huge trove of data on breached forums. So somebody found a vulnerability. Somebody else stole 5.4 million Twitter accounts. And the person who found the vulnerability got $5,000. That's what you get. Okay. The seller claims that the database contains data, i.e. emails, phone numbers of users ranging from celebrities to companies. The seller also shared a sample of data in the form of a CSV file. So you get data about celebrities, potentially including their login information and all that other stuff. And for finding the vulnerability, the guy only gets $5,000. A few hours after the post was made, the owner of a breach forums verified the authenticity of the leak and also pointed out that it was extracted via the vulnerability from the HackerOne report above, reads the post published by Restore Privacy. We downloaded the sample database for verification and analysis. It includes people from around the world with public profile information as well as the Twitter user's email or phone number used with the account. The seller told Restore Privacy that he is asking for at least $30,000 for the entire database. And that's the news. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe if you haven't already, and smash the bell if you haven't already. And I'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
Don't forget to ride. Farewell.